Okay, can we start then with a brief introduction to Cyber Intelligence House? How long the company's been around, why it formed, any key sort of milestones to date?
Yeah, thanks, Phil. Great to be here as well, and thanks for having me. So, Cyber Intelligence House started around 10 years ago in Singapore. So, one of the few sort of Asia-based cyber intelligence companies, or cyber security companies for that matter. Started around 10 years ago. Our founder, Miko Nimila, came up with the idea of cyber threat intelligence, or building a cyber threat intelligence company, more to the point, not cyber threat intelligence itself, and started to really piece that together. And the great thing is, here we are 10 years on, we have a fantastic data lake of information that's, we've got 10 years of history, obviously 10 years of tracking threat actors. But the key thing that we have is personas, old personas that our analysts use. So we use actual analysts. We don't just use scraping, or now AI scraping, to get our information. We actually have full-time analysts, and they sit in very interesting deep and dark places in the web, deep and dark web that is, and kind of gather all this information. As you can imagine, you can't just rock up to a forum in the deep and dark web and say, "Hey guys, what's going on? Tell me all about it." It's brilliant, because obviously you're going to get nothing much out of that. So yeah, so the key thing with Cyber Intelligence House is that we've got that depth of information, that depth of data, and it's curated by real human beings that know the difference between what good looks like, what's going to be useful, and what's just going to be noise, and what's just going to produce a lot of alerts that nobody's really going to use. So yeah, it's a great company. Customer-wise, we have around 87 customers globally at the moment. We're on a huge growth trajectory, which is why we're doing the show in a few weeks' time. But also, we want to basically, pretty much be on a fairly substantial growth trajectory, because the proof in the pudding is there. It's now time to really put it into practice and move on from there. So.
Okay, yeah, and as I understand it, your solution, the main solution you have, is the cyber exposure platform, which obviously you've explained a little bit about why the company exists, but perhaps you can tell us how what you've already explained is turned into this platform, and yeah, that'd be good to understand.
Yeah, so the cyber exposure platform is really made up of several components. The primary, which is the ability to run intelligence reports. So you can imagine the gamut of information that's out there in the deep and dark web that threat actors are talking about, that info stealers, malware, info stealers are up over 800% year on year. There's just a lot of scary numbers out there. And so how do you actually find out the stuff that other pieces miss? The vulnerability scanners do a fantastic job. The likes of Tenable are a great company. I used to work for Tenable. But they look at the sort of the vulnerabilities. How do you know what's being talked about? How many info stealers are pointing towards you? The stuff that sort of, it's the dark space between the stars, if you like. And that's really what the cyber exposure platform comes in to address. So it gives the ability for people to run different reports. You can have a continuous monitoring part of it that will enable you to make sure that any new breaches that you're a part of, you're flagged up they're flagged up to you, so that you can then remediate and do whatever you need to with that. What we target, I know we're going to talk a bit more about MSSPs in a bit, but we target MSSPs particularly because we enable them to give services, to build services around our platform. So, like I said, it might be a snapshot, a cyber exposure snapshot that they do a check-in every quarter with a customer. They may, and of course they charge accordingly for that. They may turn that around into a continuous monitoring, so they can monitor what the latest breaches are and what that looks like. And so the cyber exposure platform gives access without having to build any infrastructure, without having to train specialized personnel, to MSSPs particularly, and we deal with some government agencies and things like that, that gives them the ability to create a service and really push that out to customers so they can see exactly what their cyber exposure is, not just the vulnerabilities, not just the pen testing part, but actually what the deep and dark web holds and what's been talked about, plus what credentials are stolen, what credit cards are stolen, what their VIPs are being talked about and things like that.
Okay, and I mean, this next question, you may well say, well, I've already answered it, but I'll ask it anyway. In terms of contrasting, obviously you mentioned Tenable and some things that other folks do, but what is it when it comes to threat intelligence solutions? What is it that you do different, or better, and particularly, obviously, you're referencing MSSPs as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the key differentiator with Cyber Intelligence House is that we have, like I said, we have curated information. So it's very in depth. We've got several customers. One of which is NATO, for example. That's on our website. And the reason they chose our solution was the depth of information they get out of that. So that's one of the key differentiators. So the depth of background on the threat actors, the depth of the info stealer alerts, the depth of the malware tracking, and things like that. Putting that into context for an MSSP, it gives them another feather to their bow, as it were. So you can actually build a business around just providing threat exposure, reports to your customers, whether that's continuous, whether it's quarterly, monthly, whatever that customer's appetite is. And that means you can actually build out another revenue stream, and it enables you to, also protect your customers. But off the back of that revenue stream, there's also further services, because the cyber exposure platform that we have will throw up different parts of the organization's network or website or whatever that looks like that needs to be addressed. And so therefore you can get services off the back of that to address those. And so you're not only expanding your services, but you're also expanding existing customer footprint as well, basically. So yeah, and that's our whole focus is around MSSPs. We white label, so there's no branding or anything like that. The platform, the reports are generic, so that the MSSPs can use them. They can top and tail them with their own details if they wish. So that's one of the key differentiators, is ours is fully white labeled. So the customer can't turn around and come to us and say, actually, I don't want to buy off XYZ MSSP, I want to buy direct. A, we don't sell direct, but B, we basically will push them back through the MSSP anyway. So that's kind of how the business model works.
Okay, and in terms of the use cases, benefits, you mentioned one there, I think the cyber exposure checkups, but you've also, I think, got things like security operations centers integration, accelerating sales, enhanced testing. So yeah, just give us some, either sort of fill those out or other sort of ways
Yeah.
in which you think MSSPs can leverage your tech.
Yeah, I think the integrations are again a differentiator for our platform. So take through a few examples. Security Operations Center, SOC. Yeah, one of the key things there is really the being able to integrate credentials or found items that are found within the deep and dark web into your SOC, so they can be automatically alerted. So while our platform can be used standalone, with the API integrated to the SOC, if there's additional operations that you want to put into that SOC, so like I said, leak credentials, being able to put in information that comes from the deep and dark web about what threat actors are up to, so you can alert your customers as it comes through, rather than having to log into a separate platform. So it's a really key part of it. It's just an enhancement above the SOC, and we find generally customers will pay a premium for that, because they're getting much more information than the standard breaches or standard hacking attempts on the network and things like that. Sales acceleration. I mean, there's nothing better in the world than walking out with a piece of paper to your customer and saying, this is what I've found about your network. This is what I've found about your website. This is what I've found on the deep and dark web. Your VIP's credentials are leaked, passwords are leaked, things like that. You put that in front of a customer, and they all of a sudden go, "Oh my God!" And I want to sort of caveat this by saying we don't want to ambulance chase, but it's building awareness. So if you build that awareness with your customer to say, "Did you know this exists?" And customers don't know IT, they don't know cybersecurity, they know their business. It might be building, it might be a dentist, whatever that business is. They know that business. They don't know about cybersecurity, so they're looking at the MSSP as a trusted partner. So if they're able to give them a heads up and say, look, this is a part of life or cybersecurity you actually haven't thought about. This is what it means, and this is what we've found, and we can fix this for you for an additional service. So huge sales accelerator, because there's nothing worse, than imagine going into a mechanic with your car and saying, well, it's, that wheel looks fine. It's like, actually, it's falling off, and here's the evidence of it, blah, blah, blah. That's what you're doing. So, of course, you can't ignore it. The enhanced pen testing, again, if you're doing regular pen testing, which, I'm a huge advocate for, then being able to inject real credentials into that pen test will give you an immediate idea. So if a threat actor was able to obtain those credentials and obtain that information, how far can they get in the network if they did try and it's not hacking, it's called logging it. It's basically, everyone talks about hacking and threat actors hack and that sort of thing. Actually, most of them just log in now because they steal the credentials and log in and see how far they get. So the old hacking days of kind of, oh, I can pivot from here and this, and la, la, la. No, you just log in and walk through the front door, basically. So with pen testing, it enhances that because it enables you to test real credentials, real leak credentials that any threat actor would be able to obtain and then be able to walk through the front door, like I said.
Yeah, and in terms of sort of typical deployments, if such a thing exists, you mentioned obviously as one of the examples there, it's a very powerful thing to go into a potential customer and show them their existing cybersecurity sort of posture and where there may be some gaps. And I think that those potentially turn into one-off projects, maybe where you know real world get roll your sleeves up and get stuck in. And then I guess the ultimate aim is to then presumably go across the organization, sort of recurring revenue and scaling up and with automation. Just yeah, perhaps describe that sort of journey, if you like, which the MSSPs should be able to take their customers with them.
Absolutely. So yeah, we have a very sort of simplistic pricing. I'm not a fan of, the sort of pricing where you buy one thing and then you have to buy, the wheels, the seats, the windscreen, not a fan. So our pricing that I've put together is very simplistic, and we have three different packages. We have an entry level package that enables for sort of 3 logons and things like that. But you can do unlimited assessments. So you can already start doing assessments on all of your customers. And these are reports that I told you about that basically enable the MSSP to go to their customer and say, this is what we've found and things like that. But on top of that, we also have a snapshot tool. So it's very simple. It's very easy for anyone to use. You don't have to be technically minded. You literally put the website of the customer in and it will come up with a snapshot. That's something that's coming out very soon, which will enable MSSPs to really start to build their audience, if you like. So our subscription is very simple. You get full access to the platform, depending on what level of access you want. That enables you then to really build that service, like I said. And the return on investment is very tangible because it's literally you can run as many reports as you like and then sell those reports to your customer on whatever frequency you wish. If the customer wants it quarterly or they want it monthly, or if they're super critical and they want something weekly or every 2 weeks, you can build a pricing structure, which is what we help with as well, around what that looks like and how that really does build that additional revenue stream. So it's one of those things that you don't have to have this big infrastructure in place. You don't have to have a 24/7, bunch of analysts. You don't have to have, technical people. It's actually super easy to get going because the platform is there, it's built. You log into it. Obviously, we provide full training and you're up and running. It's that simple. And you can start to build revenue from day one without having to have a ramp up or anything like that. Like I said, no expensive infrastructure to put in place, no expensive people to hire. It's just log in and away you go.
Okay, and in terms of the feedback to date from the channel partners you've engaged with, and then I suppose the potential you see, you mentioned obviously started in Singapore. It'd be good to understand sort of where you've got to in terms of your presence and what your plans are, I guess, to expand that. But also, as I say, the feedback from channel partners that you're already working with be good.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. So yeah, I mean, obviously started off in Singapore, as you said. I'm based in the UK, so this is, I've been on board with Cyber Intelligence House for about the last 3-4 months type of thing. And so part of my role is to really build out that next level, if you like, the scalability. So yeah, we've been around for 10 years and we've had some great wins and we've got some great customers. But how do you then scale that? And that's what we're looking to do now. How do you sort of get to the mass market? The platform's absolutely ready for that. The market's ready for that. I think we've seen such a huge uptick in cyber attacks that this is exactly the sort of tool that's required. So currently we have some really good strongholds. So the UK, we've got some good vendors here. Europe, I've got part of my team are based in Europe as well. And then the US is something we're targeting right now. So we've got probably got about 10 odd customers in the US. But we are very much, looking to expand that and that sort of thing from there. And then South America, who would have thought it? But South America is a big stronghold for us as well. So we've got quite a number of MSSPs there. But yeah, the next sort of phase of this, if you like, and which is why we're doing the show in a few weeks' time, the Managed Services Summit, is going to be to really expand on where we've got great reference customers, we've got great examples of this, this whole solution I'm talking to you about, building the service and building the cyber exposure reports. So the next steps is to expand on that because the model's proven, it works very well, and the feedback is phenomenal. The best feedback you get is when a customer renews year on year on year, and that's exactly what we get a lot of. So yeah, it's our target now is to build much more of a presence in the US, really build out what we have in the UK and Europe as well. I've got someone new starting next week that's going to focus purely on UK and Europe. And yeah, it's that whole acceleration scalability piece that we can now build on because the platform we know is good, the feedback is excellent, and we've got sticky customers. So you couldn't ask for more, really.
Maybe just in finishing, in terms of the roadmap, I mean, you've outlined obviously the sort of plans to expand, but in terms of the technology, the platform, just so folks, I mean, do you update it regularly and then every now and then have a sort of major upgrade? Just what you can share as to how the platform might be developing,
Yeah.
bearing in mind, obviously, the AI world is fairly new, so that presents fresh challenges to everyone. But yeah, just what you can tell us.
Yeah, well, the biggest thing, speaking of AI, it's here to help. So we're running our own LLM internally, so we're not relying on anything externally. So what that means in reality is where you have people looking at reports and trying to decipher what's important, what's not. You can hand that over to the AI and say, okay, I've got this report with 150,000 different hits on it. What's important? What do I need to do first? How do I fix that and things like that? What that translates to in terms of an MSSP, it means they again don't need to hire a big team to be able to translate what the report means and how they can build services around that. That can all be done with the inbuilt LLM. That's coming up very shortly. It's basically, we see that as a huge step forward because it just helps speed up that analytical process of what's important. Where do we start? Because most reports can be fairly overwhelming. Not from our platform because it's very curated, but I think there's just a lot of alert fatigue. So there's that part of it. In terms of updates, we generally, as soon as a breach comes out, it'll be within our platform within 24 hours. So it's super quick. So any breaches that happen around the world, our analysts find, then they will basically have that in their platform within 24 to 48 hours. And that means that, if there's any new leaked credentials, they can be immediately acted upon, passwords changed and things like that. It means that if there's any critical information like around info stealers, there's a new info stealer that's pointed at your website. Again, that can be mitigated immediately. In terms of the functionality of the software, that's up. We update that just at a constant cycle. So we're always adding new features, always speeding things up because when you get 10 years of data, it's a lot. So it's I think we have around 26 billion credentials with a B. So yeah, there's a lot. So how do you then serve that up quickly? How do you make sure it's relevant? How do you make sure it's contextual? How do you do industry benchmarking, for example? And how does my customer A compared to other customers in that same industry? What does that look like? So a lot of what we're doing is just making it easier and easier to really build this as that service that I spoke about earlier on. and to make sure that that revenue is there, and to make sure that it's it's super easy to be able to deliver this new service and give so much more reassurance to your customers.
And maybe just one final thing you might have a view on or not, but in terms of the AI world we're in, clearly, the bad actors can leverage it as well as the good. Does it change the balance at all, the balance of power? Because clearly it's a cat and mouse game, it always has been, but now AI is here. It clearly helps the bad folks do things quicker, but then to your point, it also helps you find things quicker and react. So is it a sort of zero-sum game, or is someone getting a slight advantage with AI? I don't know.
It's an interesting one because so far we've seen, well, put it this way, the biggest delivery of malware is still email. It's still email to this day. So we've seen the emails get better because obviously a lot of them were used to be in sort of broken English and things like that. So running that through any one of the AI free AI services that are out there, we've seen an improvement in that. So a lot of the sort of spoofing stuff is getting better as well because obviously people are using AI for that. And it is that race to try and sort of, who's using AI for good and who's using AI for bad, and what does that look like? But so far I can see that it's fairly, well, so far everything's keeping up pace with each other. So the bad guys' use of AI has been keep pace with the good guys' use of AI. I think one of the key things that I've seen now, and I've been talking about this just recently, particularly with our CEO, Miko, is vibe coding. It's scary stuff. So vibe coding, in case you don't know, it's one of those things that you can use AI to say, I want to build an app or an application, whether it's on a phone or a computer. This is what I want it to do. Build me the code. Now, that's wonderful until if it's an app that collects credentials or collects sensitive information, then security is not something that's coded in. A human coder would think, actually, I need to probably encrypt this piece, or encrypt the traffic between A and B, or encrypt the database, or whatever that looks like. Vibe coding just gives you what you ask it. So there's a lot of leaky code out there now because of AI, which is kind of interesting. But again, that's the part of the use of our platform. So as far as I can see, it's a fairly even sort of race at the moment, the good guys and the bad guys. But then we're moving into this other quite sort of scary part, which, like I said, the vibe coding, which saves a super amount of time and a huge amount of money, of course, because it's AI delivering it, but then brings with it huge vulnerabilities as well that can be exploited fairly easily. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, I'm fascinated by it. I use AI a lot myself. We're obviously building the platform, but where it's going to go, just, keep watching and keep holding on.
Well, as you say, I mean, cybersecurity probably was, until AI came along, top of everyone's list, and now you've got AI. So the combination of the two is a fairly powerful one. So it's just
Yeah,
going to be interesting to see what happens. But it's been great to chat, and thanks so much for sharing insights, obviously, into the company and thoughts more generally about some of the cybersecurity issues in the landscape. So, Ian, really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Philip. It's been really interesting, and hope everyone enjoys the video.